All right, this is Rudy. It's Friday, July the 31st. I wanted to make a quick announcement video to this yet another propaganda slander attempt by the Peter Riley, Jonathan Swartz, Deanna, Beatty, Jim Lott, and that whole crew that has consistently, since the very beginning of the Kent Hovind trial since I became aware in December of 2014, been consistently trying to paint Kent Hovind in the worst possible light. And this Jen Fishburne is yet another attempt. They did a interview with Jen Fishburne, who basically is trying to salvage the credibility of Judge Margaret Casey Rodgers by saying that she did not say that Kent's crimes were worse than rape. I take an entire hour and I go through the entire interview and provide my commentary, but her story is completely full of holes. She's completely off her rocker, and whether she's being paid to lie or whether she is just a busybody sticking her nose in somebody's business so that she can get her 15 minutes of fame, who the heck knows? But there's several things that you can go listen where I talk about her interview I spend a whole hour covering it. But the highlights are that she doesn't even know the timeline of the sworn affidavits. The sworn affidavits were given in April of 2008. The sentencing date was January the 19th of 2007. So that's 15 months later is when the sworn affidavits were written by John Gusty, Teresa Snyder, Katie Rudolph, Ken Andrew Hovnd, Joe Hovnd, Pastor Greg Dixon, people like that. And the reason it took 15 months is because the court held the trial transcripts for 15 months. Normally you get your trial transcripts very quickly. I mean, within a month or two, right? But the court held Kent Hovind's trial transcripts for 15 months. And so that in the narrative that the opposition camp, Jonathan Swartz and Jen Fishburne, the narrative they push forth is that, the worse than rape came from the comment that Eric Hovnd made at Joe Hovnd's sentencing. And then she even makes the mistake that Joe Hovnd's sentencing was the next day, when Eric Hovnd referred to the fact that the court referred to Kent's crimes as being worse than rape. Okay, but the problem with her statement, if you listen very carefully, is Joe Hovnd was not sentenced the next day. The next day would have been January the 20th, 2007. But Joe Hovnd was sentenced on June the 29th. That's almost 6 months later, right? So her whole thing is just full of holes. She claims to take meticulous notes. If you want to get to the bottom of it, just have a congressional hearing, subpoena Jen Fishburne, subpoena Gwen B. Kissinger, who's the court reporter, subpoena Judge Margaret Casey Rodgers, who's an absolute lying reprobate degenerate, who's at the tip of the spear at this persecution of Kent Hovind and his family, and now Paul Hansen. Subpoena all of them, and also, by the way, subpoena Pastor Greg Dixon, Kent Hovind, Katie Rudolph, John Gusty, and those other individuals as well, who actually signed affidavits. And this is nothing but hearsay propaganda. Jen Fishburne can't even prove that she was in the courtroom. And I would ask Jen Fishburne, why don't you sign an affidavit that says that the judge did not say that? And even if you were in the courtroom, let's just grant you the benefit of the doubt and say you were there. The fact that you did not hear something doesn't prove anything. The fact that you did not hear something, 8 other people signed affidavits that said they did hear something, right? And so those affidavits carry a lot more weight. They're sworn affidavits with notaries' signatures, and it's a lot more weight regarding credibility than your interview with a known biased reporter, yellow journalism, biased reporter like Jonathan Swartz and Peter Riley, who's consistently painted Kent Hovind in the worst possible light. So I would just say, if you are interested and this is of interest to you, I spend an hour going through the whole interview and providing my commentary. If not, it's just more hearsay evidence from Jen Fishburne, who seems to come out of nowhere and have the noble goal of getting out the truth. That's what she claims to be interested in. Wow. Okay, well, Miss Fishburne, where were you when Kent Hovind spent 9 years as an innocent man in prison? Where were you now that Paul Hansen is facing multiple years in prison for mailing a letter, and this biased, anti-Christian, reprobate, wicked Jezebel judge has came against both of these men and their families? Okay. Anyway, I'll put the links in the information bar, and you can go read Peter Riley's ridiculous article. I could mention what Deanna said about my birtherism and my geocentricity. They're taking out all the stops, right? They're pulling out all their guns, and they're going to try to discredit, Pastor Kent Hovind, and they're trying to salvage the credibility of Judge Margaret Casey Rodgers. But I'm here to tell you, Judge Margaret Casey Rodgers' credibility cannot be salvaged.